I just uncovered a Super 8 movie of the very first Wave Rider Florida Pro Surf Contest held at Sebastian Inlet back in 1976. And I'm going to combine that with the pictures I took of that event for this video. I just got this machine right here behind me. It's called the Movie Maker Pro. And what it does is it takes 8mm and Super 8mm movie film and digitizes it so then I can take the produced file and edit it on my computers. Now, I first started taking Super 8 movies back in 1977 up to about 1983 before I switched over to video cameras. I bought that old Super 8 movie camera from my friend Ron, who first started using it in 1974. I recently ran into Ron and told him that I'd got this machine that was going to let me digitize all those old movie reels I had taken with this camera, and he told me he still had all his movies and wanted to know if I'd be interested in taking a look at them to see if there was anything on there worth digitizing. Now, Ron had filmed us in the mid-70s surfing and skateboarding, so I was pretty sure he had some classic footage. So I told him, heck yeah, I want to take a look. So he handed me his box of movie reels and off I went. The first reel I loaded onto that machine had his coverage of the 1976 Wave Rider Florida Pro Surf Contest at Sebastian Inlet. Now, I was at that contest too, taking still pictures. So I've combined the two, and this is what I've got. Let's just back up for a minute and take a look at how we got to this point. I started surfing in 1973 when my family moved to Naples on the Gulf. My dad got us a house just a few steps from the beach, and I learned to surf with my friends at the 3rd Avenue South pilings that occasionally had a small but rideable wave. The Naples Pier was always better, but you had to be pretty good to get any waves there from the more experienced surfers, so we were stuck learning the basics at the 3rd Avenue pilings before moving over to the pier. Once we had the pier wired, the next goal was to surf some real waves, and that meant heading over to the East Coast, and Cocoa Beach was the prime destination. The first obstacle to overcome was finding transportation to get over there. I knew one guy that successfully hitchhiked from Naples to Cocoa Beach and back, but there was no way I was going to do that. None of us had a car, so my first trip was about 10 of us taking the 240-mile trip on a Greyhound bus to Merritt Island and then a taxi to Cocoa Beach, all the while carrying our surfboards. That was our first and last time doing that. Once we got a little bit older, we started getting cars, and then all you had to do to catch a ride to the East Coast was have your share of gas in the hotel. I'd get super happy when a friend was ready to go and needed someone willing to chip in on the expenses. Make no mistake, we aren't talking about rides in some luxury SUV. Heck, those weren't even invented yet. We're talking about beater cars that had about a 50% chance of making the trip without breaking down. As long as it had gutters to attach some Aloha racks, we were good to go. I had a friend that owned this Pinto that was always up for an East Coast trip, and I didn't care how good of a driver he was. I wasn't going to pass up the chance to surf some good waves. So we'd load up the car and head to Cocoa Beach, and most of the time we wouldn't even know if the surf was up. There was no internet back then, so no surf forecasting sites to check. You could call one of the surf shops like Primo or Oceanside that offered a surf report and piss your parents off for making a long-distance phone call. There was a payphone in the parking lot at Sebastian Inlet, and you could try calling that, hoping someone wasn't too busy jumping off the bridge to pick up the phone and give you an honest surf report and not just send you on a 4-hour drive for nothing. Sometimes we'd pass a car with boards on top coming from the East Coast as we were headed towards the coast, and we'd stick a thumb out, pointing up and down, hoping they would return the signal with a thumbs up, letting us know that the surf was up. It was a guessing game back then, but honestly, we didn't care because we just liked getting out of town and giving ourselves a chance to surf. While Cocoa Beach was a place to stay with all the surf shops and restaurants and hotels, Sebastian Inlet was the place to surf. This was probably the most consistent surf break in Florida at the time, and it definitely had a pecking order. The first peak wave next to the jetty was the best, and crowd control was strictly maintained by a few self-proclaimed enforcers. Just a bit north was Second Peak that sometimes broke really good. I'd usually paddle out at Fourth Peak if there was such a thing, because that's about the only wave I had a chance of catching at that place. Only the best surfers battled it out for that first peak wave, and it attracted the best surfers from all over. It was a great place for taking surfing pictures because it broke relatively close to the beach, so a super telephoto wasn't required. You could also stand on the jetty to take pictures with a unique view. All things considered, Sebastian Inlet was the best location for the IPS, or International Professional Surfers, to host an event on their new pro tour, which launched in 1976. The Wave Rider Magazine Florida Pro Surf Contest was born. I had just bought my first camera with the ambition to be a surf photographer, so when I heard this contest was coming to Sebastian Inlet, and I'd have a chance to see and photograph many of the pro surfers I'd only seen in the magazines, I knew I had to go. By that time, I had bought my first car, this 1968 Volvo, for $500. That indestructible 4-cylinder engine got me to the East Coast and back about a zillion times without breaking down, so I was good to go. Only a few other surfers from Naples made it over to watch the contest, and one of them was my friend Ron. He surfed with us at the 3rd Avenue pilings too. He also had a Super 8 movie camera he'd often film us surfing with, and occasionally he'd get someone to turn the camera on him for a change. So Ron was on the beach at the contest with his Super 8 movie camera, and he caught me walking up with my Nikon camera and 500mm Vivitar lens. We then proceeded to capture mainland America's first World Pro Surfing Tour event right there at Sebastian Inlet. The 1976 Wave Rider Florida Pro was in the books, with Greg Mungall taking the win. I couldn't positively identify the surfers in the contest, but I think the surfer in the white tee and yellow shorts is Greg. I'm pretty sure the surfer in red is Californian Mike Purpose. It would be cool if anyone can identify any of the other surfers by leaving a comment below. Well, that's the end of this surf contest coverage. It's not the end of my Wave Rider Pro story. As a surf photographer, it can get pretty boring standing on the hot sand waiting for the next set of waves to come, so you have some action to photograph. To pass the time, we'd scan the crowd looking for something interesting to photograph. You might say I had an eye for beauty, and once in a while I'd find someone that was model material. One of those discoveries was the ultimate surfer girl, Dawn Williams. I got her to do a photo shoot at the beach, and with a few rolls of film and a couple hours of shooting in the afternoon, we got some very nice pictures. I submitted a few of my favorites to Wave Rider magazine, and one of Dawn holding a surfboard was selected to appear in a 4-page poster pullout featuring women surfing. It was my very first time being published in a magazine, and a big thrill for this budding photographer. Wave Rider went on to use another one of our pictures for an ad in their magazine to promote the next Florida Pro contest, and that image was also used on the contest poster that could be seen hanging all over Brevard. After that, girls from the beach began seeking me out to help them develop their modeling portfolios, and I was soon photographing Florida's best. There's much more to the story, but I think I'll save it for another video so I can provide more in-depth coverage with lots of pictures and video. Stay tuned, because I have a lot more stories to tell from my experience as a photographer.